Hey guys, this has to be one of the most popular and most common houseplants out there, the spider plant. This one's mine. It's been a little bit neglected. I'll show you in a minute what exactly I mean by that. But in today's video, I'm going to be sharing all of the crucial and critical care tips that you need to know in order to care for this houseplant in 5 things you ought to know about the spider plant. All right guys, so I purchased this spider plant quite some time ago, maybe about a year ago, if not a little bit longer. It's still in its nursery pot. Now, when they do have little babies, this is what it looks like. I'll get into that in the video shortly, but just a little bit about that neglect. I'm not sure if you can see, but this is the root system. I had it laying in another pot that had some horticultural charcoal in it, and the roots have just taken over. They look really great and healthy, so that's good, but it looks like I'm going to have to cut this guy out in order to repot it, which I'll be doing in this video as well. Thanks for checking out this video. I'm Tyler. If you like what you're seeing or you find this video to be useful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, or better yet, you can hit that subscribe button to really show me some love. Click on the bell for alerts and notifications for future content. Oh yeah, don't forget to check out my merch store, tylermossop.com. All right guys, so the first thing you ought to know is the soil mix or the soil composition best for your spider plant. And today I'm going to be using about 2 parts of an orchid bark mix, about 1 part of perlite and 1 part peat moss. I also am going to be, conserving the horticultural charcoal, what am I trying to say? There you go, as well, so about 1 part of that as well. When it comes to spider plants and their soil mix, they really appreciate a quick draining or something that drains really nicely. So using, 2 parts of this orchid bark mix, perlite, and some of this peat moss will really keep things, draining nicely. They do appreciate more of a pH neutral soil, so you definitely don't want to go overboard with your peat moss in that case. But I think this mix will work nicely. Let's mix this up, cut off that nursery pot, and get it potted so I can share the other things you ought to know about caring for your spider plant. It's not uncommon for a lot of people to keep their spider plant in a hanging basket, and that's just because of the nature of this plant. It looks great in a hanging basket, especially when it propagates these little babies on its own, and they just look so great kind of dangling off. Me, however, I'm going to opt for this little stand and this terracotta pot that I have here, which will work great. I've mixed up the soil. Now I just need to get this out of its pot carefully. Let's see if I can do that by just kind of cutting this open. Just be careful to try to avoid any of the root system as best as you can. Oh wow, I'm gonna have to show you guys. The roots are insane. This is definitely root bound. Wow. All right, give me a sec. I'll be right back and I'll give you guys a close up at these crazy roots. All right guys, so it's definitely not advised to just let your snake plant hang around in its nursery pot for about a year. Being pretty busy, but that's still no excuse. As you can see, these roots are absolutely incredibly large and root bound. So it's still doing just all right. It's still thriving, but I think it's going to appreciate this repot. So just take a look at that. That's actually just ridiculous. Let me see if I can switch it to this. Absolutely beautiful. All right, let's get this repotted. Now, I was going to be using this pot, however, I think it's a little bit small, so I'm going to switch it out for this one, which is ever so slightly larger, just with those giant, enormous roots and the horticultural charcoal. I think this is just a little bit of a more suitable container for it, so we'll get that set up here. Set this one aside, just add some of this soil mixture to the base of the plant. and then get this repotted. Now, the second thing you ought to know when it comes to caring for your spider plant on top of the really good, well-draining soil is when it comes to light, these guys appreciate really good, bright, indirect light. If they're exposed to any direct sunlight, it will scorch the leaves, so that's not great. You definitely want to avoid that. So just keep in mind that it's good to keep them close to a window, but just a little bit set back so that they're getting more bright and direct light and not anything that's direct. So let's just add in this. All right, guys. All right, that's looking perfect. So I'm just gonna add some soil around the plant. Be right back. So this container worked out just perfectly. I forgot to mention that this is a terracotta pot that's being glazed on the outside. There's no glazing on the inside, and there is a built-in saucer here at the bottom, which is perfect for drainage. And that brings me to the third thing you ought to know when it comes to caring for your spider plant, the watering tips that I can provide. Now, out of all of the advice, I think watering is probably something that you need to consider the most when it comes to caring for this particular houseplant, and that's because these plants do enjoy like a moist soil mix, and it's kind of tricky to keep the soil moist. So I think, you know, being aware of how much light, bright indirect light your spider plant is receiving is kind of crucial into the amount of water. Watering is always a function of light, especially when you have a really sharp draining soil mix like this. And I think there's another really great tip in here. Now, if you have or if you've noticed any sort of browning tips on the end of your spider plant, that's because they're also sensitive to some compounds or, chemicals that are in water. So if you can avoid, using tap water or let the water sit out for a day or two before watering it, that will help some of the chlorine, for example, evaporate off, and will help you also avoid some of these browning tips. So you don't want to let this kind of go too many days without watering, but you don't want to be watering it so much because you want to maintain that sort of nice balance between dry and super soggy. That kind of in-between happy medium of moist soil mix will work best for these plants. Now, if you do get the conditions right, your spider plant will continue to grow, as has mine, and put out more of these amazing, adorable, cute little baby spider plants that I just absolutely love. Now, this brings me to the fourth thing that you ought to know when it comes to caring for your spider plant, and that is humidity. Now, if you have one of these, you're probably aware that humidity is really important. It's really great to keep these in a humid environment. It's just going to help them thrive. And again, if you're seeing any of those browning tips and you are, however, letting your water sit out and that kind of thing, and you're still getting it, it could be because your humidity levels are just too low for this plant. Another thing to keep in mind is they just don't appreciate really low temperatures. So putting this in a room or area that is going to have contact with a cool breeze, maybe by a door or somewhere that goes below 50 degrees Fahrenheit, is just absolutely a no-go. So just be mindful of the humidity and temperature for sure when it comes to caring for the spider plant. So last but definitely not least, the fifth thing you ought to know when it comes to caring for your spider plant is fertilization. What kind of fertilizer should you be using? How frequently should you be using it? So what I recommend is using a well-balanced, water-soluble fertilizer. That way you can dilute it about 50%. To be honest, have to say I haven't been fertilizing mine regularly, so I need to get on that, because ideally providing some of that fertilizer, well-balanced diluted fertilizer, about once a month is probably ideal. Now that this guy is in his new home, newly potted up with good soil mix, those roots were crazy as you saw, and get this guy maybe going in the bathroom or something like that to provide a really good level of humidity. I think it's gonna grow like the rest of these plants that are just growing like crazy. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Well, that's it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Now, definitely leave a comment down below. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button. Until the next time,